I've been working on my Robin Hood RPG on the side for the past year and a half, and it's finally time to launch the demo. Which is terrifying, because this is what it looks like right now. What's more, after being laid off from my job a few months ago, and with the software industry being what it is, I realized that this game might be my only shot at making a living. But the only way this could ever work is if I can take my hobby project and turn it into a masterpiece. But here's the problem. Okay, there are a lot of problems, but the biggest one is this. While most of the features are already in the game, one crucial thing is still missing. Right now, when you start the game, you're dropped into this huge open field with zero context. Every good RPG quickly gets you into the main quest, but that's just the thing. I haven't made the main quest. To give the player a bit more context, the first thing I added was this intro cutscene, which, well, for now it's just text. But this made me realize that I also needed a main menu, which hopefully looks somewhat professional. I added some NPCs like Little John here, who will be the first guy you talk to, and he'll start you off on a quest. But right now, the only quest I have in the game is a placeholder. I need to kill two birds with one stone here. I need to introduce the different factions in the game, and give you a chance to try out all the different game mechanics. For that, I'll need a dungeon. I created a new scene and started to build out the layout. For the dungeon to work, I need to keep three things in mind. One, it has to challenge you in melee and in range, which means it needs big open spaces and tight corridors. Two, since there's stealth, you need to be able to keep track of enemy patrols and use looping paths to get behind them. And three, part of what makes this game unique is that when you die, you respawn tied up and have to get free, which means you'll be able to pick locks or use contortionism to untie yourself. I added jail cells that will also connect to other parts of the quest, which I'll talk about in a bit. I also added cracks in the walls that if your contortionism is high enough, you can squeeze through them for alternative pathways. I put some finishing touches throughout the level and placed the goblin enemies who have infested the area. One thing I do think is quite strong about this game is the combat system. The combat in some of my previous games were pretty lame and made the game kind of boring, but since then I've gotten a lot better at game design in general and animation, sound effects, particle effects, so I'm happy to say that right now it's actually pretty fun. But there was one thing that was absolutely not fun, and without this nobody would ever like my game. The problem is, I had no idea. Blissfully ignorant of the glaring issue, it was time to start sending the demo to my friends to try this thing out, just to, you know, see if I needed to make any small fixes or if I missed some little bugs here and there, and boy was I not prepared for what they found. But first, a word from our sponsor, Zero to Mastery. Don't skip ahead because you have been asking for more resources to learn the technical side of game dev, and if that's you, then their Unity Bootcamp course is exactly what you've been looking for. This course takes you from being a complete beginner. You can go into this course knowing nothing about Unity or C# or coding at all and have never made a game before, and by the end you will have an enormous versatile set of tools at your disposal to create any game you can imagine. You'll also build a complete RPG game you'll be super proud of that will have enemies, combat, inventory, dialogue, and quests. As I was going through this myself, I saw that there was a ton that even I didn't know about, so no matter what your level is, you will get a lot out of this. It's also very affordable for the amount of information you're getting, and when you complete it, you'll also get a certificate that a lot of the ZTM students have put on their LinkedIn as proof that you really have this skill. There's also a Discord community of fellow students who are learning alongside you, and everybody helps each other out. So go check out the Unity Bootcamp course, link in the description, and a huge thanks to ZTM for sponsoring this video. Now, let's see what my friends thought of the demo. Okay, so 3 of my friends have tried the demo, and after looking through their videos and their comments that they made about it, I now have 3 pages of bugs and features and stuff I didn't even think about that I need to fix. Little things like when you die, they wanted a fade out transition, which of course should be there. They struggled to understand how to equip weapons, even though I put big bold text in the middle of the screen telling you how to do it. Seriously, everybody missed it. And then one major issue that in my mind was totally fine, but to them was an obvious problem, was this little thing right here, the stamina bar. Running and attacking without spending any stamina, obviously that's an issue. The thing is, in my mind, it was just as obvious that I'd get it working after the demo, which made me realize something very important about game dev. Doing things like this, like having a stamina bar that doesn't do anything, makes it feel like I'm just giving you an unfinished game. That's just not acceptable for a public demo, which also made me realize that I needed a lot more work than I thought. I spent a few weeks chipping away at these fixes, but as I tried getting the stamina set up, I ran into one of the weirdest issues I've ever seen in game dev. Whenever you'd start running and then blocked or drew your bow, which also drains stamina, the stamina would just drain faster and faster even if you stopped blocking. I'm using a third-party character controller, okay? I didn't make it, so I had no way of knowing why this was happening. I asked on the forums, but to no one's surprise, they didn't know how to fix it either. Using the stamina the way they wanted proved basically impossible, so I had to rip this thing open, go into its C# guts, and hack into it to modify the stamina directly. After a brief period of panic, we finally have a flawless stamina system, and when you run out, it even flashes. Things seem to be coming along well, but something just didn't feel right. Something that nobody was putting into words. It just wasn't appealing or intriguing enough. Nobody nobody that tried the game was really excited about it. I found myself seriously thinking I was stupid to think that I could make money off of this. It's just not that good. And it was true. At this point, I have to give a huge shout out to Thomas Brush. Thomas spent a lot of time explaining to me the 3 major things about the game that were holding it back that I for the longest time refused to admit. And the first one goes all the way back to that thing I screwed up at the beginning of the video. Of course, the game feels boring. I'm throwing all this lore at you without giving you a reason to care. Now, in Thomas's game, the opening is very different. You immediately relate to the character and you need to know what happens because it's so personal. After a few attempts, I think I finally have a decent opening.
Because of me, they know King Richard yet lives, and they will not relent until he is dead. I must stop them. I cannot fail England again.
Now the second problem. Let's be honest, you might like or dislike the art style, but this isn't winning any awards. I thought this would be easier to make than realistic graphics, but it turns out that realistic graphics are
super easy, barely an inconvenience.
First, I reverted the changes I made ages ago to my assets. They were realistic to begin with, so I just had to undo what I did to make them cartoony. Then with these newly realistic assets, I started to build a new dungeon because honestly, my first one wasn't up to snuff for the demo either. Throw in a little bit of lighting, some post-processing, and that is one good looking level if you ask me. The hard part will be the enemies. Unlike the walls and the environment, I did build these enemies off a base model and I made them specifically with cell shading in mind. There's nothing to change them back into. Also, I have a bunch of my own animations made for the different enemies that all hook up to the same enemy script. Changing this could cause some really annoying problems. The first step to tackle this was to acquire a realistic looking enemy. Unity Asset Store, thank you very much, I'll take that. I attached the enemy to the skeleton that has all the animations and, as expected, this resulted in some unexpected issues. First of all, those eyes, my goodness. Also, this man's posture is worse than Igor. After some excruciating weight painting and tweaking every single animation, it finally looks, well, not bad. Now, there was one last thing Thomas told me about that this game needs to succeed. Something I've neglected this entire time, and that is the hook. The problem is, I can't think of one. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. What creative thing do you want to take advantage of in every fight or stealthy situation? What do you think would be fun in this game? Let me know in the comments. There's a lot to do for the next devlog because we gotta get this thing out the door. Thanks so much for watching. Wishlist Robin Hood Shadow of Nottingham on Steam, and God bless.